topics. It was all about technology. It was all about how the future of technology is going to look like. So I chose a very grim, serious subject, which is the problems with technology. So this topic is a rather is a topic which I often get called to talk about, and I'm going to be talking how new habits are coming out today because of usage of technology, and how these habits are being formed, and what these habits mean from a perspective of learning, right? And all of these are my own personal insights. So this is not going to be like another TED Talk where I will keep throwing out numbers and statistics at you. I have one slide on a couple of statistics, but that's about it. Everything else is my own personal insights. All right. So let's first understand, why is habit important? We are nothing but a sum total of all the different types of habits that have come together. Do all of us agree on that? That is what we are. We are nothing but the sum total of our habits. So, habits is not something I'm going to sit back and define, but I'm going to just tell you two different levels of how you want to think about habits. The first level as a behavior, as a physical habit, right? Each one of you that are sitting right now, would you be surprised if I tell you, every single time you go to any talk, you would be sitting exactly like this. It's a crane, like that, you like that, right? You like that, with your hands here, right? Would you be surprised if I tell you that that is a habit as well? When I'm giving my talks, I have been consciously asked to avoid noise words. Each and every teacher in the school would also have your own noise word. Some of them have a noise word called you know, and nowadays the Gen Z noise word is like this, like that, it's like this, it's like that, like. So every time I talk to them, I have a ticker and I keep counting off how many times they say like. And generally, in a normal conversation, it's between 30 to 50 times. That's a noise word. And that is a habit. Let's talk about emotional ways in which habits manifest itself. We have body language, which I just spoke about. But the most important thing I want to talk about when it comes to emotional ways in which a habit manifests itself is how you think. The way you approach something is also a habit. Some of them in your circle, have you come across people that no matter what the situation is, they're always positive? Do you know such people? I know they're hard to come by, but you probably know such people, right? And have you come across the other side of the spectrum where no matter what you tell them, they will dismiss it off? Generally, that happens to be your spouse. Yeah? Most often, right? Those are habits that are very difficult to break. Your thinking and how your thinking starts is a habit that you need to really be cognizant about. And that drives you towards positivity, towards negativity. So that's a general primer about habits. Now let me talk about what are digital habits. Now digital habits are creeping up on us, right? Let me give you some examples. Physical digital habits. How many of you have been victims to phubbing? Do you know what phubbing is? No? Okay. You're talking to someone, and that someone suddenly starts looking at the phone. That's called phubbing. You're in a group of 3 people. All of a sudden, one person takes the phone and walks away, while the other 2 are conversing. That's called phubbing. Have you all been a victim to phubbing before? Yeah. Have you all been the protagonist in the phubbing show? I'm sure you are. Each one of you have phubbed others as well, yeah? I'm sure you are. And in fact, I'm surprised that you've not phubbed this event so far. except for one gentleman that I saw was on the phone while someone was talking. But when you fub, you are passing a very subtle message to your child that you don't care about the child. It's a very important thing. It adds up and it adds up and it adds up. Without saying, you're saying a lot of things to the child. And you know it better. Emotionally, what are these digital habits doing? Attention negotiation. When you're constantly on the phone, your attention span keeps reducing. Have you noticed it in yourself or in your child? You must have seen this. It's a common occurrence nowadays that's happening. As a thinking process, the digital habits that have crept in are introducing depressive behaviors in children and adolescents. And you know why that happens? When you're constantly looking at videos, one after the other, internally in your brain, there is a train of comparison that sets in. You swipe, you look at somebody who won an award. You swipe, you look at your friend in Peru. You swipe, you look at your friend in the Bahamas. And then you're starting to think, why not me? Why am I not getting those awards? What is happening to them? Whether you like it or not, this is a medical term now. It's called Facebook depression. It's a diagnosable medical term which has a medical diagnostic number in the United States for which you can get medicines prescribed. It's called Facebook depression, right? Social validation is another thing. So those are the different types of habits that are manifesting itself nowadays because we're constantly on the phone. We love being on the phone and swiping, right? Information itself is now becoming a habit. Not just consuming information, also creating information. In the next 2 minutes, humanity would create the amount of videos that we as humans are creating in the next 2 minutes is more than all of the videos that humanity has ever created in the 19th century put together. That is how much of information that we're putting out there. If you're putting so much of information out there, it needs to be consumed, right? So which means somebody is going to get addicted to it. Consumption and creation is a very vicious cycle, right? And we consume over 74 gigabytes of information daily, which is like watching back-to-back 16 movies. 16 movies. That's the amount of information that we're constantly consuming. Let me talk about some of the undesirable outcomes of digital habits. Celebrating coolness. How many of you think that when your child talks out of age, you think it's a very cool thing? All of us do that, right? When your child tells you something that is not of his age, that is something that probably a 20-year-old person would talk about, the first impression as a parent you have of the child, wow, my child is growing. He's growing faster than I thought. And the second mistaken impression that all of us have, and there's tons of research on this, is that we assume that knowing information is equivalent to intelligence. And they are not the same thing. Don't make that mistake, right? This is fostering a huge generation gap, by the way. And you know how this is happening? The child comes to you, tells you something cool, and you're looking at the child and saying, I don't understand what you're saying. And the next thing that happens amongst your peers, of all the parents put together, you're all getting together and talking about, you know what, my child is talking about things that I don't even understand. And the next parent adds on to it, the next parent adds on to it. You keep doing this, it goes into a cycle where you are building a gap between you and your child. And if you're thinking that it is a cool thing, it's time we start changing what kind of coolness we need to celebrate. It is not the LOLs, it is not the, ROFLs, or anything else that social media is bringing out today. None of those are cool, and they don't need to be celebrated because they are hindering the learning process. They're not adding to the learning process. And I'll justify that in a bit. Passive consumption. This is becoming a huge issue. Watching videos without engagement. You're scrolling endlessly and you're scrolling mindlessly. 90% of them have admitted that they've gone onto the phones for something, but they've got stuck onto it because there are so many other distractions and they don't realize why they went onto the phone to begin with. And this is a very common occurrence. There's nothing unusual about it nowadays. Misplaced application of knowledge. On the phone, can you identify who is an expert and who is not an expert? Is there any way that you can identify on the phone? The answer is none. The only way you can identify an expert is when you're looking up to him face to face and you're getting non-verbal cues that tells you that he is good at what he's doing, not by reading his post or reading his Twitter feed. Now, why is this so important? Because your child could get hooked onto advice online that might not necessarily work for your child. Right? So you got to be careful about that. There's a lot of information fatigue that is setting in. What is information fatigue? Too much of information. How many of you go to the supermarket and you decide to buy something and you end up looking at more than 10 or 15 choices and you start to think about your choice but end up picking up something without any thought whatsoever, because that is called decision fatigue. You don't have the time to decide what works best for you. What you simply do is, because you're so tired, you pick up the next available cereal, whatever it is, Kellogg's or whatever it is, and you just go home, right? The more and more you make decisions out of fatigue because of too much of information that is out there, you always make wrong choices, right? The second thing that happens is you trust information without due diligence anymore. The more and more that's thrown at you, you're going to start to think, all right, this is the right thing, let me just believe in it. And that's how misinformation spreads, by the way. Ease of information access. How many of you know of parents that are extremely good at something? Could be, I'll let you take, that's all right, that's all right. It's ironic, right? My topic and what you do. So, ease of access. Do you know of parents that are very good at something? Let us say, I don't know, playing a piano, or playing, did I say piano? Playing a violin, or playing a piano. And the child never took to it. Do you know of such situations? It happens quite a lot. The only people that we know where the parents are very good at something and the child actually takes on to it is but a minority. I don't know how many of you are aware of it, but that is a minority. Most of the time, the child does not pick up what the parent does. And you know why? Because the child is growing up watching it day in and day out and day in and day out. When you have ease of access to the skill becomes insignificant. If coming to this TEDx forum was for a charge of $1,000 each, and each one of you had paid $1,000 to come up here, you would be paying a lot more attention. It's natural, right? But if there is ease of access to something, that something loses value. That's exactly what's happening with learning and information online. Everything is online. How many of you don't take notes, or how many of you delay things because you know that it is available there on the phone? So let me not do it now. It's all right. It's right there. It's all right. It's right there. Yeah?
Relationship with knowledge is changing. Now we have conversations of know-it-all. We do not really respect experience anymore. Right? This is a big debate. I'm not going to go into it because all of you are experienced here. If I were to ask you, between you in your jobs and someone else who has least amount of experience, what is the difference? I'm going to tell you, you're going to find it tough to answer that question. Because right now, in today's day and age, what you can talk about, the person without experience, but with Google, can talk about the same thing. It is a different thing that what you could do, he might not be able to do. But in interviews, you don't really look at what they can do. You only look at what they say they can do, right? And by the way, knowledge also drives hierarchy, right? When you were children, you looked up to somebody. Why would you look up to somebody? Because there has been a gap of knowledge, because that somebody knows more than you do. Now that the information is in the tips of your fingers, that potential difference of knowledge is fading away. It's slowly going away. So now nobody looks up to anybody, but everybody is calling each other as equals. Which is good in a sense, but it's not good when it comes to learning. This drives, there is a big concept called illusion of explanatory depth, right? What does this mean? Suppose if I ask you, how many of you know how a key works? A key and a lock, how does it work? In a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being the highest, what would all of you rate yourselves as you know how the lock and the key works? Give me a number. 9? Great. If I were to pull you up and I ask you, can you explain how the lock and the key works? Which I'm not going to do now, but you can do it on your own. You can do it on your own. More than 90% of the times, people cannot explain it. And after which we go back and ask them, do you want to rate yourself again? They say, yeah, maybe 3. Why do we think we know it all, but when we are asked to explain, we falter? That is a classic cognitive bias. All of us fall prey to it, right? And there's nothing wrong about it, because we always think that there is an expert out there who knows it all. Why should I know it, right? Why should I be bothered about whether Kellogg's selling sugar or whether XYZ is not selling sugar, because there is an FDA that is handling it for me? Right? That's a big trap, guys. This gives rise to scientific pessimism. What is scientific pessimism? If you were to ask your child today, is there anything that you learned in school that you think is new? Your child is most likely going to say, nope. I already knew it. Google tells me everything. There is nothing out there to learn new. This is called scientific pessimism. When there is a lot of information overload, you start to think that there is nothing more to discover. When you believe that there is nothing more to discover, you lose the joy of life. It's being robbed. So what can we do? It's very important that you cultivate expression. So today's TEDx talk, with all the kids coming out here, it is so essential in each one of their lives when they go back and watch this video of them talking on TEDx with this big logo out there. It is going to boost their confidence a lot, point number 1. Point number 2, the more and more you allow your child to come up like this and talk, they get better at expression. Expression is where learning finds completion. You cannot learn something if you do not know how to explain what you've learned. They just don't come hand in hand. I've spoken to a lot of people who tell me, oh, I know it very well, but I just can't tell you. My answer to them is, Thank you very much. Because you don't know it. Which means I gotta go find someone else to tell me. So what happens to this gentleman? He just doesn't know it. Knowledge has got a very interesting phenomena that it is distributed in the community. It's not one person's ability. Yeah? So you have to schedule these sessions with your kids. If such sessions are not possible, when you do gatherings at home, ask your child to present a topic. Ask him to talk about the sun. Ask him to talk about Mars. Ask him to talk about mathematics. It's very important. Cultivate inner stories. Each one of us have an inner story that we keep telling ourselves. Whether you like it or not, each one of us have it. Make your child go to an inner story that is important, right? Like I did for my daughter. My daughter is right there. So I did for my daughter. Since she was born, I kept telling her the mathematics is easy. She has grown to believe that it is easy. It's just a story you tell yourself. Right? Orchestrate teachable moments. Create controlled failures for your child. But be there to say what they could have done better. If you can do more and more of these for your child will understand what it means to learn. Right? If there are such telltale signs in your child already, if your child is already curious, if they're already focused, they're result-oriented, all of these elements then encourage this. These are important elements for your child when it comes to learning, right? Be curious yourself. Unfortunately, the child doesn't learn by telling the child what to do. The child only learns if you do it yourself. You've got to keep your phone away. At least when you wake up, when you go to bed, while you're eating, and while you're doing the big job. These are the 4 important parts in the day where you're constantly on the phone. Why do I have these pictures? Each one of these pictures describe a scientific phenomena that nobody today knows about. I'll just take a couple of them and talk to you about it. The birds flying out there. Why do the birds have an arrow-like structure when they fly? There is a leader, there are 2 birds behind, there are 2 more behind, there are 2 more behind, it forms an arrow. Why? Nobody knows. Rubber bands. There you put a rubber band, it holds something together. Why? Nobody knows. Cats. Why do cats purr? Nobody knows. You all might be thinking of some answers in your mind as I'm saying this. They are only Google answers. Scientifically, nobody knows. Right? Perfume. Nobody knows how the human nose can smell a molecule. Nobody knows. Okay. Non-stick pans. Nobody knows why it doesn't stick. It just happens. We don't know. What are they called? Sticky Post-its. Nobody knows why you pull the Post-it out. There is no gum where you pulled it out of, but the gum stays on this side of the paper. But when you pull it out, it doesn't stay on that side of the paper. Isn't gum not supposed to do that? Right? Nobody knows. The strings of the violin, nobody knows why it makes that sound. Be curious yourself. Right? You ask these questions at home, you're going to drive curiosity in your child. What's in boiling water? Does anyone know why water boils? I like that answer. Nobody knows. Yeah. But all of us have seen water boiling. But have we bothered asking the questions, why does the water boil after a certain amount of time? And why does the bubble come out only in specific points inside the kettle? Why isn't the bubble big enough? Why does the bubble float out? If I put salt in the water, will it continue to boil? Can I boil the water even without the temperature reaching 100 degrees? The answer is yes, by the way. Yeah? Can I boil water when it's extremely cold? The answer is yes, by the way. Right? So, if you put this in Google, Google will give you suggested questions. Right? And then you open that, they'll give you suggested answers. Don't fall prey to it. There is a lot more to learn in the very, very, very simple things that we are looking at. Foster curiosity. Get them to your child so they are also curious. And if they are not curious, then they're going to find it very difficult to learn, and everything is going to become a swipe. Don't allow your child to swipe the biggest learnings of their lives. Right? Sometimes you've got to pause. For heaven's sake, even the words that I'm speaking right now needs a pause so that you understand. So take a pause from your devices, help your child, let them stay curious and stay curious yourself. Thank you very much for listening. So while they're swapping that out, I just want to ask you for any comments on the topic that I spoke about. Anything that you want to add on? Anything that's worked for you? Who is that? Is that Christian, Adam? Xander, tell me.
It's still alright to have a little bit of screen time.
Is your parent here?
Yes.
All right. So the answer to that question, Xander, is absolutely, as long as you know why you're going to it, and you come out once you get what you want. Is that possible?
Yeah.
Well, you have to keep trying that, make that a habit, and I think it will become possible.